Uma Sinha is just a person. She's a person today who is humbled at having the opportunity to serve women of this country. I many times feel really humbled that so many women come to me with their problems. The smile that you see on my face today is a reflection of the smile of all these women who come in contact with me. In order to become a doctor, there were certain events in my life that actually made me choose this path. I actually come from a very service kind of middle class background where my father was an engineer. He retired as a very senior officer in SAIL, Bokaro Steel City. My brothers are engineers. Many of my uncles are engineers. But maybe when I was in about 5th or 6th standard, I wanted to actually learn guitar. And my father said a very nice thing to me. He said, I would rather have a stethoscope on your neck rather than a guitar. So that made me think that am I capable of becoming a doctor? Should I become a doctor? And that started the thinking process and the path. The school that I worked or studied in was actually a very cosmopolitan kind of town and a cosmopolitan kind of school. So when I was in 10th standard, we had a Lions Club eye camp to do cataract surgery for poor. And I readily volunteered there. And to my excitement, I volunteered straight in the operation theatre. But the operation theatre had a very strong smell of the antiseptics. And I didn't find it very comfortable. I almost fell down feeling dizzy. And that made me think, should I become a doctor? So there are many ping pongs that were going in my mind. However, I was preparing for IIT because my brothers had cleared IIT and that's what my aim was at that time. But in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, should I be a doctor? And my father was the one who was grooming me. So finally, I took a plunge in my 12th standard and gave the All India entrance exam for medicine. Got into Institute of Medical Sciences, BHU, which selects only about 35 students all over the country. And that gave me the confidence that yes, I could. And there was no looking back. So I think I chose the right path. It excites me a lot today. And I'm very happy. And I think my father, who's no more, I was able to look after him in his last days as a daughter and as a doctor. I'm sure he must be very proud of me today. Traveling. I love to travel. And I think this traveling bug, as I would again mention, has been put in our lives by my father. I remember as a kid in school, we used to be taken for long travel programs across the country to visit so many places during our summer and winter vacations. So that has somehow made a lasting impression in my mind. Today, given a choice, I would happily hop onto a flight or a car or a bus and go somewhere, explore that place and come back, eat the local food, meet the local people and just learn what is happening around me. So traveling is something which really excites me and it really helps me to unwind. The other thing what I really enjoy is I'm a big foodie, so I like food. Now when I like food, I have to cook the good food. I can't take anybody not cooking good food for me. So I get into the kitchen, I love to cook for myself and of course I'll cook for everybody else as well. So these are some things which really gives me enjoyment as well as relaxation. Well, reading a book here and there, watching movies, listening to some music, these are some activities which we often do. When I did my medicine, there was a time when I had to choose what specialty I would further progress in. I was one of the best students in my batch. So I had the opportunity to join any branch. Surgery always interested me. So I was almost thinking whether I should join general surgery and do surgical branch as my specialty. But then what turned me around was the fact that gynecology is specifically dealing with women's life. It's a complete branch. We have medicine, we have surgery, and the best part is that women seek for gynecologist help when they are the most happy. So it gave me an opportunity to actually touch women's life when they are in their happy phase, when they are pregnant, they are looking forward to a new baby. So it made me think that this is probably the right path for me. So I trained in gynecology obstetrics. But as I progressed in my practice, I realized I had a aptitude and skill for gynecological surgeries. And so slowly I trained myself, I acquired more skill, slowly developed my niche in gynecological surgery, minimal access surgery, and now robotic surgery. So this is how I feel today. I help women to solve their problems right from adolescent age to their postmenopausal age with any kind of gynecological problem that they have. So it's a pleasure dealing with women. Well, I did choose medicine as a choice, and almost when I finished medicine, I got married into a family full of doctors. So my husband is a doctor, my father-in-law is a very renowned plastic surgeon. The rest of the members are also doctors in my in-laws house. So that further motivated me to actually take the path of medicine in more enthusiastic manner, because I found people surrounding me were also from the same field. However, I came from a completely different background. I was the first person in my family who became a doctor. So that's something that excited me. Choosing a career and a path sometimes can be very mind-boggling because there are many choices. We choose and make decisions at that point of time where we feel this is the best for me. And when I finished my school, I felt medicine was best for me. I gave my entrance exam, I got through, so I joined my medicine. I never looked very far ahead that what exactly I wanted to do 10 years, 12 years, 20 years in life. I took each day as it came, did my work honestly, took whatever opportunity came to my life and grabbed it with both hands, worked hard, and just kept on taking the path which took me along. In the background, as I said, I always had an interest in the surgical aspect of medicine. And that is how I slowly, gradually got inspired by many other surgeons around me, many other gynecological surgeons around me, and took the path of dealing with women's health in the gynecological surgical area. So that's what motivated me. Well, the number of female doctors in India are rising very fast. If you look at the recent data, there are more girl students entering the medical college than men. However, by the time we chose, in fact, in my medical college, when it started, BHU, Institute of Medical Sciences, they had just 30 or 35 students per year. They used to earmark 5 students to be women. So that was the status when the medicine actually started, and I was one of those students who actually started when very few girls would join medicine. But I look back that as a female doctor in India, the society does give you a lot of respect. The trust that they ensure, the kind of comradeship that patient has with a female doctor is very, very nice. So when they come to my office, they don't just consider me as a doctor. Most of the time I become their friends, or maybe their sister or their aunt, and they confide with me so many other things that is happening in their life. So other than the respect and the trust, I find in India, doctors are really looked upon, and their advice followed, and there are some instances here and there which probably are not that good, but often I think as a female doctor, I have always found respect in the eyes of my patients and the people around me. I am usually an early riser, so I usually utilize my early morning times for doing some of the activities which I love. So for the last 10-15 years, I have actually understood that health is important and we must not assume that we are all healthy. So yoga has become a part of my life. So the past 10-15 years, I have actually been 3 to 4 times a week. In the morning, I have a teacher with whom I do regularly yoga. Then is my job to actually get the food, lunch, breakfast organized, and I reach hospital. Not much time in the morning to do much because we are usually reaching the theatre in the morning, so we reach home early. Back home in the evening, a bit of time with the family. I have a small garden in my balcony which I tend, and this is the time when a little bit of academic activity happens. Now, I have a passion for teaching, I have a passion for doing academic research work, and that is the reason why I spend some time in the evening to update myself, to prepare for the classes that I take. I take classes for postgraduate students, I take classes for undergraduate students in Australia. So that classes happens at 6 o'clock in the morning. I get up in the morning and take a online class from here to Australia. So I'm an honorary professor of gynecology, also an associated professor of a university called Macquarie University in Australia. So these are some of the things which keep me busy in the evening, and once all this is over, it's just rest. So that's also important in the night. Stress is a very difficult thing to handle, but I think we get better with time. When we are young doctors, we take stress with everything that is happening around us. But what we learn over time is medicine is a very challenging job. Everything does not fall into place the way we want. So we need to learn to take each day at a time, do our best, and hope that what we have done will take the right path. Sometimes we take stress back at home. If the patient is not doing very well, or the patient has come very sick with us, we are trying to do our best for that patient, we take that stress back home, and it reflects when we discuss with that problem. But the good thing with me is now I'm married to a person who is also a doctor. So my husband is a good sounding board. So if there is a stress with any work related problem, we discuss with each other, try to solve each other's problem. So that helps a lot to handle the stress today. And we, as I said, we get better with time. We learn how to handle our stress better. I think over the years I have learned one thing is to have patience and have a ear to listen to the patients. Most women who come to our office come with some problem. So if I don't give them enough time to listen to their problems, they can never be satisfied. Sometimes they just want to tell, it may have no relevance to their treatment, but listening to them is, I think, a good skill that I have developed over years. So when I deal with or any patient who comes to me, I first let them talk. So I give them 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes to get out of their chest what is troubling them. And then I ask them a little question of what I could help them, or how do you want me to help. So my unique skill today to handle patient is to understand what the patient has come to me for me to solve for her, not what I want to do for the patient. I could want many things to do for the patient, but the patient may not be looking for those answers. So understanding the psyche of the patient, that what they are looking for to be solved today when they came to my office, is, I think, a skill that I have picked up over years now, and it comes in very handy. When I talk to the patient in that tone and that understanding, the patient is, in the end, thinks that they can trust me, that I have grasped their problem, and then they set foot out of my office confident, thinking that yes, they can trust the judgments or the decisions I will be able to subsequently take for them. So this is a kind of a skill of listening and empathizing with the patient has come over a long way, which I have developed. Over the years, from the time I started my practice to today, of course the workload has increased, because the number of cases that you see, the number of surgeries that you are doing is much more. One thing I realized as I grew in my medical practice was to do a group practice. So we now form a group of 3 or 4 doctors who look after patients together. So we share responsibilities. We are making sure that no patient is left unattended. For example, if I am in a surgery, or if I am in a robotic surgery case which takes 1 hour or 2 hours for me to operate, and there is a patient in emergency, that patient is not going to be not attended just because I was in a surgery. So we work as a group, and that is one way of handling emergencies all the time. So the group of people I work with, we are always there for the patient. Any one of them will be there. Patients know that one of us will be there, and that is why they feel confident and happy that somebody will take care of them in the emergency. So this is our way of taking emergency. We never say no at any time, day or night. As a group we work, and we take care of patients who are delivering, patients who had surgery, patients who have any other issue, pain, emergency, whatever. This is kind of strength only for me, yeah. If you ask for my weakness, I think as a doctor I get emotionally attached with my patients, which may not be bad, but sometimes can weigh very heavy on a doctor's mind, because how many patients can you get attached to? So that becomes a kind of difficult issue sometimes. But although we say that we must treat as physicians being emotionally detached, it is not humanly possible. So if you are a human, you get attached, and that I think is one of my greatest weakness when I deal with my patients. Achievements can be in various forms. It could be on the various recognition that you got on the national and international platform, the awards that you win, the papers that you publish, the students that come and thank you for a great teaching that you did. So these achievements aside, I think the biggest achievement today I feel after doing medicine for such a long time is really the smile on the faces of these women who get treated and go back to their home happy. I'm a kind of person who embraces change all the time. I always feel a change can always bring something good. So I never shy away from any change, which includes my updating any skill or learning a new method or doing something or even asking for help from anybody. But I am also kind of very determined and kind of person who will not let go. So if I decide that I need to do this, I will find my way somehow to be able to do that work. It may take me some time, it may take some difficulties for me to overcome some difficulties to be able to do that, but I do not let go. So that is one of the, I find a very important personality trait that I have, that I do not let go. I continue to pursue the problem or the thing that I want to pursue to be able to reach the point that I want to do. So that is something which I am not very sure whether I imbibed or it came to me through genetics, but that is something which has helped me every time in my life to be able to overcome any personal, health or any other difficulty that I have had. I do not ever ask a question, why me? Why this happened to me? I just take it in my stride. I said, fine, this happened, but what next? What do I do tomorrow? What can I do to make it better? And then I just go forward. I do not look back. I do not regret any decision that I took in the past, because I cannot change that. Based on those decisions, I go further and I find that what best I can do tomorrow. Let me forget about yesterday what happened. The rapport a gynecologist or myself that we establish with patients is for generations. We become their friends, family. So we will find that patients who came to us 20 years back come 10 years later with their mother or mother-in-laws, or patients who came as mothers bring their daughters for some problem. So as gynecologists, we have the privilege to become their confidants for generations together. So that is the kind of rapport we develop with our patients. That is the comfort level the patients have with us to be able to confide in, with us with any of their problems. Many times I find patients even confiding to me with nothing to do with medicine. They may have a problem at home, a social problem, and still they will call and find out, do you think we should do this, or do you think we can do this? And I am at loss and I say, I cannot take that decision for you, but if I were you, probably I would do this. So it is just a common dialogue that keeps on going between us. Apollo Hospital has been very generous to me. I have been in this organization for roughly 10 years now, and I have been able to groom myself well to be able to take care of women's problem. It gave me an opportunity to update my skills in robotic surgery, and today with that infrastructure and the team support, I am able to do robotic surgery for women in this country, benefiting women with this technology all over. As a hospital, the management of Apollo actually leads from the front. So that gives a lot of confidence to the people who work day to day here to be able to take decisions and work hard. Since the management has always led from the front, given us the liberty and the freedom to do our best by providing us the correct team of people, not just the doctors and physicians, but also the team of nurses, technicians, even the staff in the hospital. Everybody around is patient focused. So everybody, when they enter the hospital, only thinks that what best we can do for the patient who walks in today, and that adds on. It has an effect of rolling effect. So it just gathers more and more momentum and ultimately benefits the patient who walk into this hospital anytime. Women are mothers, wife, they take care of the family. Their first reluctance in coming to hospital for surgery is that they have to be away from their family. And of course, the regular fear of pain, what will happen after the surgery, and all these factors. But the main factor that prevents them to take a decision for surgery is that they have to be away from their family. So when we tell the woman that you need a surgery, the first thing she asks, how long do I have to be in hospital? How long do I need bed rest? And when can I go back to taking care of my family or go back to work? And that is the reason why we try to do surgeries in a manner today that the patients need to visit the hospital minimum and stay in the hospital as minimum as possible, recover very fast without much pain, and so that they are able to take care of their families. Women by and large don't take care of their health as the foremost issue in their life. They always bring the good health or well-being of their children, of their husband, of their family before their own problem. So I find that women reach to us only when the problem is beyond what they are able to handle. So this is one problem, I think especially in Indian women, that they don't really come forward with their health problems very fast. One example I will give you of elderly women, especially the grandmothers. A common problem in women is postmenopausal bleeding. But many of these women will keep quiet. They'll think, oh, it will go back, let me not disturb my son or my daughter-in-law or my other family members for this little problem. But they must understand that this sign of bleeding in the postmenopausal age group can be a sign of uterine cancer. And if detected early, we can treat them completely. But many times we find that they come late. They have been having bleeding for maybe 6 months, 1 year. By the time they come to us, they already have developed cancer. So these are small things which women neglect, but they should come forward as soon as they form a problem, because the earlier they come, the better outcome we can give. Yes, to the young girls, I really want to talk about to them all the time. And this is one of the social initiatives that I take, that I actually take a lot of public related health talks to talk about it. The commonest problem that young girls walk into my office is some kind of period problem. And that is usually delayed periods, weight gain, and commonest diagnosis they come with already diagnosed, or they come with what we call as a PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. What these young girls need to understand is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and that is why we call it syndrome, not a condition, because it's a syndrome of things which remain with the girls all their life. It is not that I can do magic when they come, give them one course of medication and they will become better. It is a lifestyle disease. It is something that is happening to our young girls because there is lack of exercise, there is a lot of pre-processed junk food in their diet, and they are obese. So these three factors, if they look into, most of them can actually improve their health themselves. So young girls must ensure that their weight is normal, which is in the normal BMI of something about 18 to 22. They eat right and they exercise every day. Today, in this era of everything online, everybody is sitting much more than what they were doing earlier. So we have to make an effort to exercise or to move around or to use our body the way it is meant to be. So this is something which young girls need to be aware of, because PCOD, they may come to us today with just period problem, but it has a long-term implication. That means it is associated with long-term development of diabetes, long-term development of other metabolic conditions. They may have ovulatory function problems, so that they have difficulty in getting pregnant. So it has implications for many stages in their life. So if they take care right now, they can maintain better health. Okay, obesity is what slowly gets into us and we don't realize. By the time we realize, we have already become obese, and then it becomes very difficult to lose. So maintaining a good weight is probably one of the most important thing. As a person you can intervene. Weak women often are because of development of anemia or other deficiencies, because the diet is not sufficient. They are probably bleeding heavily during their periods but ignoring that fact, and many times these women who have heavy bleeding leading to anemia and weakness can be treated by simple medication. All they need is to seek help at the right time. The other factor, the other class of women today are also the Google hunters. For a simple problem, they will think that the worst has happened, because they will look into so many symptoms and the Google Baba will give them an answer which probably is not true. So I would suggest that if you think anything is happening which is out of the ordinary, it is better to seek a medical help rather than take it with the fact that, oh, it may go away or there is something very serious to me either. When we talk about robotic surgery, we have to understand the background of surgery. Now, if you look at centuries of how surgery was performed, right from the day of 6th century BC, where surgery was performed on the banks of river Ganges by Shushruta, and then came development of anesthesia, pain medicine, antisepsis, and so surgery came to the operation theatres and big surgeries were performed. At that point of time, the bigger the incision one surgeon would make, the bigger the surgeon would be. But that was not going really good to the quality of life of the women or men who were undergoing surgery. And that is why 3 or 4 decades back, the technology of doing keyhole surgery came into picture. At that time, that was also brushed aside, thinking it is something new and probably will not be help. But today, that technology, as we know as laparoscopy, is here to stay. Everybody knows about laparoscopy. All patients want their surgery, and why not? Especially in gynecological surgery, there is no surgery that we cannot do by minimal access or keyhole surgery. But the problem is that these are difficult surgeries to gain skill for. It takes a long time for a surgeon to gain the skill to be able to perform these surgeries for these women perfectly and in all situations. And that is the reason robotic surgery today is a logical step in improving these minimal access or keyhole surgery to be able to do more and more surgeries for women. Now, why are we moving into more technology? It's true for every field of life. Now, if you take just a simple form of communication. Now, about 10 years back, almost everybody had a small phone where you could punch in some numbers, make a call, receive an SMS. But today nobody wants to have anything which is less than a smartphone. For simple reason, for communication was there with that phone as well as for smartphone. So I jokingly tell my patients that a robotic platform for me to operate is like a smartphone. I get better technology in terms of I can see better because I am working on a 3D vision with 10 times magnification, as compared to what I was doing in laparoscopy, which was a 2D vision with 3 or 4 times magnification. The laparoscopy gave me long instruments which were difficult to manipulate, while robotic instruments are intuitive, they move like my hand. It's as if I'm doing an open surgery but with minimal access way. Because of magnification in robotic surgery, I can do more precise surgery, less blood loss. So there is no need for blood. Pain is less. There is less tissue damage. We are able to send women home the same day or maximum next morning. So that is the advantage for the patient to embrace technology when they want to get their surgery done. So this is the advantage of robotic surgery in contemporary times. So there are basically, if you ask today, there are basically 2 forms of surgery. One is an open surgery and the other is a minimal access or keyhole surgery. The open surgery is still valid for some conditions, and if you ask me in gynecology, other than carcinoma of the ovary, the rest all gynecological surgeries can be done by keyhole surgery. In the keyhole surgery, the technology that is available now everywhere is laparoscopy, but not many surgeons are able to do all surgery laparoscopically across all spectrum of disease. So the newer technology that has now added onto the laparoscopy is the robotic platform. It's a logical advancement of laparoscopic surgery. Differences few. One is the way we see, and that is very important because what we see we operate. So in a laparoscopic surgery, we have a 2D vision in a robotic surgery, we have a 3D vision, just like we are seeing right now. But in a 2D vision, my mind has to work more to understand a 3D pathology in a 2D screen to be able to operate. We understand, we learn, we do, but it's difficult. The second is the use of instruments. Now, instruments in laparoscopic surgery, as we call it in our language, straight stick. That means it is just a stick with which I will try to manipulate and do the surgery. However, in robotic surgery, it is like my wrist. So I can move my hand, the instruments, just like my hands inside the patient and perform the surgery better. There are various other advantages that you can see, the amount of blood loss, the pain, quick recovery, all those things are much more with robotic surgery as compared to laparoscopy or even open surgery for that matter. So before we understand what surgeries we can do in gynecology, I must also clear some myth. Robotic surgery by name means there is some robot, but there is no robot. It is a computer assisted surgery. So the surgery is as good as the surgeon. So the surgeon's technical knowledge gets extrapolated by this computer enhanced technology to be able to do the surgery. So there is no robot, there is nothing automatic going on. It is the surgeon who is performing your surgery. So that myth, I suppose, should be not entertained in anybody's mind. For women in gynecology, the commonest surgery we do is basically for fibroid uteruses, where we remove the fibroid and save the uterus for young women who are wanting to get pregnant. We do surgeries for patients who have problem of endometriosis, which is a chronic inflammatory problem which affects your ovaries, uterus, pelvis, giving you chronic pain, infertility. We also do complex hysterectomies, which are difficult to perform otherwise. We do cancer surgeries for cancer of the uterus, cancer of the mouth of the uterus, and so forth. We do surgeries for patients who have urinary leakage, and that is the kind of surgery for fistulas and things like that we do. We can also do for some of the prolapse kind of problems that the women have. So there are various problems in women on gynecological issues that they have can be performed by robotics today. Any surgery that a woman needs today can be done robotically. And it is the women's prerogative to be able to get access, to be able to have their surgery by keyhole surgeries. There is no need, or there is really no requirement for any woman to be undergoing operative surgery which is open in nature today. We have technology, we have skills, and especially at Apollo hospitals across the country, we have enough technology and skills to be able to help women to have minimal access surgery, and that's what we have today also been talking as a fast track surgery. Now today with this COVID times, we have also understood the importance of telemedicine. So what we are offering to women today is a kind of fast track surgery where we do most of the counseling and talking to the patient on a telemedicine platform. So video consultation to understand the patient's problem, to look into her reports, make a decision whether she needs a surgery or she doesn't need a surgery. And then the patient is actually asked to come for a physical consult where the patient is examined, a final decision is made, patient is examined by the surgeon, by the anesthetist, all the paperwork is done, and the patient is sent home. The patient then finally comes on the day of surgery, gets the surgery done, most often goes home the same evening or maximum the next morning. So that is, we are addressing to the fear of women of not being away, of being away from their family when they are advised a surgery. So today we are able to, with our telemedicine platform, with our platform of doing all this higher technology service, with Apollo Home Care, which can actually also give them a home care assistance if they need later on, we are able to manage patients at their home front with the cutting edge technology. There is no age restriction. So even for elderly women, for obese women, these are some of the women where we would electively advise this type of surgery. Mainly because they have very quick recovery. They don't need to be lying on the bed for too long, and that's the advantage. If you ask me about awareness that women need, the first awareness they need is to understand what are the problems for which they should seek medical help. because many times women have certain problems and it is understood in the family that this problem will continue, this is part of aging, it will disappear after marriage and things like that. And for a small problem, I would say is painful periods. So awareness regarding, I would take an example of a very simple problem called dysmenorrhea, and that is painful periods. Now, painful periods can affect women who are 16 and 17 years old to 50 years old. But when they are young, most often it is brushed aside saying it is part of growing up, it will go away after some time. But one must remember, a dysmenorrhea which is incapacitating can be a clue to an underlying disease, and that disease is what we call as endometriosis. It is seen on an average that 1 in 10 women suffer from endometriosis. There are about 25 million women in this world who suffer from endometriosis. This is such a common problem that women take about 6 physician visits to be able to come to a right place where a diagnosis is made. Often about 5 to 6 years of their life or their disease process is wasted before their diagnosis of endometriosis is made. So awareness about the disease is much more important to be given in the society, and then when they understand that the disease requires medical help, and if that medical help is in the form of surgery, we would like to address this to the women of this country, that all gynecological surgeries today can be addressed by minimal access surgery, may it be laparoscopy, may it be robotics, depending upon your disease process, depending upon the severity of disease process. Very rarely you would need an open surgery. So that is something the women of this country need to understand and look for when they need a treatment, especially surgically. At the moment, robotic surgery is offered for that are complex and critical surgeries, because we also have technology and skill to do laparoscopic surgeries. So many surgeries today, both laparoscopy and robotic today complement each other. They don't substitute each other. So it's a complementary product here which actually complements the severity of the problem. So if there is a very complex problem which is maybe difficult to handle by laparoscopy, we offer them robotic surgery. So robotic surgery is gaining acceptance because complex problems are the ones we handle here at Apollo hospitals very often. We have the state-of-the-art Da Vinci robotic platform to do robotic surgery at Apollo Hospital. We were one of the first hospitals in Hyderabad to adopt this technology, and we have been doing robotic surgery for the last 8 years, since 2012. It's a multidisciplinary department, so many departments use this other than gynecology. However, in gynecology, we have taken the lead in this country to offer robotic surgery for complex gynecological problems to women. So today, Apollo Hospital Gynecology Department here, along with me as one of the lead faculty, provides one of the largest numbers of robotic surgery for the whole country. Robotic surgery for patients is a very comfortable surgery, because as I mentioned, they come on the morning of surgery and either go the same evening or the next morning. The pain is minimal. They very rarely require any kind of blood transfusion. When the patients have this kind of surgery, they are put back on their oral feeds within 3 to 6 hours. They are back on their feet the same evening. They are able to walk up to their washroom. They can go, they can eat, they sleep well. So most of the patients after 2 or 3 days tell me they don't even feel they had a surgery, which is the biggest advantage and a compliment that we get after doing robotic surgery for patients. These kind of minimal access surgery, the multiple times patients need not come back to us. And the technology that we are using today, we are actually often talking to patients online or on video consult within a week of the surgery and understanding what their problems are. Very rarely a patient actually needs to come back to us in the hospital for anything, because there is really nothing we need to do for the patient. There are hardly any stitches, there are no stitches to be removed, there is no pain, patient is taking oral medications or oral feed. So there is no need for patient to be coming to the hospital again and again. So we manage the patient with minimal visits to the hospital. We do big surgeries only on robotic surgery. The complex patients who take high skilled kind of surgical expertise are being offered robotic surgery, and we are able to give good outcome with minimal discomfort to the patient and quick recovery. For public to understand is, first of all, to understand that there is no myth. The second thing, that public has a concept that robotic surgery will take very long, which is not true. That though there's days when anything is new, it takes longer time or it takes people to settle down. But here at Apollo Hospital, we have been doing for 8 years. Today, our robotic surgery timing is probably at par or even less than what we were doing in laparoscopic surgery. The third thing that public understands is robotic surgery is expensive. Yes, if you look at the end of the day, you may feel that robotic surgery is expensive, but you have to look at the overall picture. Now, the overall picture talks about not just the amount you spend just for the surgery, but it's the workforce, or it's the amount of the productive days that you gain by quickly recovering is what compensates for what you do. Many of us do not feel anything in spending money for an expensive holiday or an expensive anything else. But we always feel the pinch when there is an expensive form of treatment. But we have to understand that technology is improving the life in every field. Why medicine should be left behind? Why surgical specialty should be left behind and not use technology to give the best to you? And that's what we are trying to do by using robotic technology in our day-to-day surgical armamentarium. To my women in the society, I would say you are the best. You are the most hard-working force here. I also understand that women work double or triple times anybody around them. They are always on their toes trying to make something or the other better, either in their professional front or their home front. What you need to understand, I will give you the example of the airline. Now, when there is a low pressure in the airline, what do they say? Put your mask first and then attend to the next. That same holds true for your health. Take care of your health first and then take care of everybody else. Because if you remain healthy, you are the nidus of your family and the society. You are healthy, everybody else around you is healthy. You are happy, everybody else is around happy. So that is one message which I have learnt the hard way, and I would like to impart to all the women out there.
Hi, it's me, Madhavi Lata. Please subscribe to GNN TV.